Hey everybody, welcome to What's Up Wednesday. I've noticed something recently, maybe not so much just recently, but over the last couple of years, is we seem to be in somewhat of a boom market when it comes to the construction market and demand. Now, if you were to look around where I am in Seattle, you would say just the opposite because the 50 or 60 tower cranes we had up for 20 plus years are mostly gone now. But when we look at certain industries such as semiconductor, data center, and biotech pharmaceutical, there's a tremendous amount of construction going on right now, which means we have a boom market. And anytime we have a boom market, what ends up happening is we see an increase in demand for people and every kind of person from tradespeople on the job, project managers, construction managers, superintendents, safety people, you name it. And then at the same time, because of that demand and the increase in volume of work, we see a reduction in the supply of available people. So anytime that you have high demand, low supply, it creates a pinch point, just like in the down cycle where there's low demand and high supply, it creates issues. And what I would like people to consider is that we go through these cycles and they average about every 5 to 7 years. However, I would probably argue that since the mortgage interest kind of collapse that occurred between 2007 and 2009, other than that period of COVID, it hasn't really slowed down. It's been a pretty strong construction market in the United States. But what I'm seeing a lot of right now is because demand is so high, there's a lot of poaching going on. And I would define poaching as employers soliciting workers, employees who are working for somebody else currently. And that is not inherently unethical in any way, but what it does is it presents somewhat of a challenge for that workforce because there's a lot of upside opportunity to maybe bolstering compensation packages and jumping ship to go somewhere else. But in the long run, I think it's important that people think a little bit about the fact that we have these trends, these up cycles and these down cycles, and they're fairly consistent. And what I would encourage people again to consider is whether you pick an employer or whether you pick an opportunity. And I know it's very enticing sometimes when you're working for maybe a really good employer and all of a sudden another opportunity comes up that pays a little bit more, looks a little shinier, looks a little prettier, and you jump ship and you find out it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. So my challenge to people would be really kind of weigh your options, do a cost benefit analysis, pros and cons, and try to pick an employer you think is going to take good care of you long term, because that opportunity in the kind of markets we're seeing and the consistency is probably pretty good depending on who that employer is. I know we're seeing the highest demand we've ever seen right now. And we hear constantly from the people we have working on our projects that they're being solicited at least weekly, if not more often than that. So think a little bit about that, weigh that, is that opportunity to jump ship and go look at that grass on the other side of the fence, is it worth it? Or is it just maybe a smoking mirror? Maybe you're going to get there and realize it wasn't everything that you hoped for. Maybe the duration isn't what they indicated originally that it was. So yeah, I don't discourage people from looking at opportunities, but I do encourage people to really do their homework, ask the right questions, and make sure it's the right move for you. Because as we probably know today, it is sometimes hard to find a good employer. And if you really like the employer you work with, I always encourage people, give them last look, go to them and say, look, I'm being solicited, I'm being courted, recruited by other companies. They're offering this. Give your current employer, if you really enjoy that employment experience and the way they treat you, give them the opportunity to at least have a discussion. That's all I would ask anybody. And I know that I went through that several times early in my career when I was being recruited away. And every time I went to my employer at the time and shared with them what was going on. And every single time they made me whole. And I stayed with that employer for almost 20 years, I believe, just short of 20 years. So anyways, I hope that's helpful. And keep in mind that this boom cycle right now it's really strong. The market's strong, the opportunities are everywhere, they're abounding, but it's going to fizzle out at some point. And if you pick the right employer and you stick with them, the chances are that when you hit that down cycle, you're going to have the job security that I think most people want. I know that's really high, generally top five on the benefits of employment list is job security. And again, picking an employer and going with them, staying with them is probably of benefit as much as jumping ship consistently for a better compensation package. So hopefully find that helpful. We'll see you next Wednesday.